Oi, listen up, you zogging kids. It's Fig was a here, telling all yous knobs, lads, youths and grots to get to the Mechtown Speedway this Mox Day for the biggest, fastest, smashiest, crumpiest race of the year, 'cause it's time for the Rumble! In the red truck, we got the baddest evil sons warboss on the planet. He's mean, he's fast, he's gargob grim guts. In the blue truck, representing the Death Skulls, watch out he doesn't loot the seat from under your ass, it's Herbrag Scarboss. But what's this? Looks like there's another git who wants to get in on the action. It's a special it's a git with every other git has heard of. It's Ooftak Blackhawk. So don't be a naff git and miss out on the best scrap you's ever gonna see. 3 bosses, 3 trucks, 3 mobs of dead hard boys, 3 fungus proof for youths under 3, limit 1 per customer. Be there. Whoa!
So this weekend I attended Arc40K. It's a large Warhammer tournament based in Melbourne. It's been going for a long time and it's a little bit different to most 40k tournaments that you would see streamed on YouTube that are all Strikeforce 2000 points. They use the GW standard scoring and they use either GW terrain or WTC terrain. Arc40K is very much based on hobby and sportsmanship and painting, not just generalship. There's a few differences. It is 1350 points. They don't score your overall generalship based on wins first. It's entirely based on your victory points. They have custom missions, so some of the primaries and some of the secondaries are custom, and there is a strong combined scoring of your actual generalship, your sportsmanship, so you get rated every game whether you're a fun person to play against. Your list gets rated. There's this concept of forged for fun, so you rate your opponent's list whether it was actually a fun list to play against or if it was too strong a meta list or if it was too weak, and then your painting and theme for your army gets scored as well. So all those factors combine to give you the overall champion, and generalship ends up being just a very small component of that. It's less than a quarter of the overall point. Now I've actually been playing quite a lot of tournaments lately, but in the smaller size, just like Arc. So in the last 4 weeks, I have been to 1,000 point RTT at my local gaming store in Queensland. And then I actually organized another 1,000 point RTT at a new gaming store that I've been going to, or gaming club rather, in Victoria called Warplings. That was pretty successful. It was the first tournament I'd really run end to end, and it was quite popular, sold out pretty quickly, and I think everyone had a good time. Between all those and other things going on, I actually kind of put my Arc preparation to the side for a bit. So I had original plans to build a really big display board and do some more thinking about the theme of my army, but it ended up now getting a week before Arc and I hadn't really put any effort in whatsoever, so I just came up with something based around the models that I had that could be fun and a bit different to what I would normally take to a tournament. So in my Orc collection, I kind of have it themed around different war bosses who have a collection of mobs for their clan, and they can just sort of mix and match when I put together a list. And it gives me, when I put together an army, that sort of ragtag look of different clans all begrudgingly fighting alongside each other, and then once the real battle's over they will continue to go fighting amongst themselves. I really like that aspect of the orcs from the older editions. the animosity of the different war bands and different clans fighting amongst themselves and then banding together to fight an interloping enemy. So my list was kind of based around that and the several different bosses sort of having a race and a scrap. So I called it the Rumble, and the list looked something like this. So the main punch of the list comes from 3 war bosses, and they have a mob in a truck each. So 2 of the war bosses have mobs, and the other war boss has some breaker boys, and he's represented by Uftak. To provide some ranged punch, I've got a unit of tank busters, and they've got a shock attack mech, and a mob of boys who are led by a weird boy to give me sticky objectives and jump around and be versatile. Then I have an obligatory unit of grots to sit on my home field. And finally, I have a Big Ed Bossbunka to give the list something very, very different and a little bit fun. So aside from the Bossbunka, it's really a pretty standard orc list, and I ran it as Warhorde. So just some mobile orcs with a bit of punch who can get in the war and chop stuff up, and some shooting in the tank busters and some CP and VP scoring. So it wasn't too out of the ordinary, and I wanted to go this way because I didn't actually have any time to get any practice matches in. So I had to get something that I was fairly familiar with and knew how the units worked. Of course, the exception to this is the Bossbunka. I don't think anyone's ever played a Bossbunka before. Being a fortification and not really having much of a place in the Orc Codex or amongst any of the Orc detachments, I really just put it in there to be different and to try and get some points for the Forged for Fun and visual aesthetic, because it is painted up fairly nicely and to match the rest of my terrain. And part of the paint scoring is for a display board. Didn't have really a lot of time to build a really big one, but I did already have a full table of Octarius terrain, and one of my previous videos shows how to make that, including a customized gate section reminiscent of the old Gorkamorka fort. So I was going to use that as part of the display board to make it look like the orcs are all coming out of the gate ready to rumble, and the Bossbunka sort of fit in there, so it achieves like a dual role of being a piece of terrain on my display board, but also being a unit that I'm actually going to play on the table. Now effectively it's 135 point tax, because it really doesn't do anything very well. It can't sit on my objective and hold it. Its shooting is pretty bad. Putting a unit like my tank busters inside it to shoot is probably not a great idea. They're better off outside it so they can get their bonuses, or in a truck so they can be a bit mobile and get to where they need to shoot. But yeah, I just thought I'd give it a go and see how it went. So I got to the event venue and had a look around. It was quite a big hall, and there was some vendors, painting competitions, even a tattoo studio. I put my army down on their display board and I was pretty happy with how it looked. And then I had a look around, and just the variety of the other people's armies, the creativity, the display boards was really mind-blowing. This is just a small selection, so at the end of the video I will put the rest of the videos that I captured, but it was really, really impressive. So eventually they called round 1 briefing and gave us our missions and our pairings, and then everyone was on a mad rush to get to their tables. So it was getting to my first table that I discovered the first thing that would be challenging about Arc is that there's no standardized terrain. So the first table had these gigantic foam packaging cutouts as the terrain, and for me the first challenge that had was there actually wasn't enough space between the terrain pieces to get my trucks out, so they were all funneled into just one way out. And the other thing was my opponent's army was not really forged for fun. It was just a very standard meta Vanguard Ultramarines list. Being 1350 points, it didn't have Guilliman and Uriel Ventress, but yeah, the big blob of Devastator Centurions and the Commonwealth Weapon Lieutenant and Manius Kalgar and his boys. It was a pretty tough list, and my opponent was great. We had a lot of fun and he was very forgiving, but it was a pretty comprehensive defeat for me. Next game, the table was kind of the opposite. There were just 4 ruins in the corner and all the middle of the board was just a huge shooting gallery, and my opponent had a Chaos Knight army with a Knight Porphyrion, so it didn't even have to move the whole game. It just sat there blowing me away, and it didn't score very well because he only had 5 models, but it was another defeat and not very fun playing that kind of army on that kind of table. Last game of day 1 was a Stormlance Space Wolf list with this massive Thunderwolf blob who can turn 1 come on the board and trap me in wolf jail. So that game I barely got out of my deployment zone, and another not very fun game with that kind of a list at a smaller points level. It's got very few counter options for me. So after day 1, I really wasn't having a very good time. I don't consider myself a bad player, but I think the misunderstanding of the list creation criteria and just not knowing what kind of terrain would be there on the day really didn't prepare me for the just massive variables in list creation and also terrain. And the custom missions, they weren't that impactful, but also playing missions that you're not used to playing. So some real learnings that I got out of day 1 for Arc is that it is really not the standard tournament. And I think that is something we've been conditioned to amongst 10th edition, with the strong focus on balance and standardized terrain and standardized mission packs. Is they're all designed to give as much of a fair, balanced, even competition, and setting expectations on not being completely blown away turn 1 and having a fair fight no matter what the list you bring is, with some exceptions. And the thing about Arc is I really felt that there were some real massive variables that really would end up in some really unfair fights. So that's probably my biggest takeaway from day 1, is that really wasn't the type of tournament that I was prepared for. So the first game of day 2 was against a Dark Angels Vanguard list. It was definitely a softer list than any of the ones I faced on day 1. It was really well painted and a good display board as well. And the game was going good, but we actually made a mistake and misread the timings for the round. And we ran out of time before we finished 5 rounds, which is something that I basically never do. So unfortunately for my opponent, that meant that I got the win, whereas towards the end of the game we got down to round 3 and I was really running out of models, so he probably would have ran over me in the last 2 rounds, but we weren't able to finish. So I do feel kind of bad about that, but we had a great game and I was able to get a win. So my next game was against a very infantry heavy Imperial Guard list, and that's the kind of list that Orcs really love. So I was able to get a pretty good win there, just ran over the top of him and chopped him up. Go is a veteran of Arc as well, so he gave some pretty good insight into what it actually takes to do well, and you kind of have to game the system and the expectations in order to maximize all your scores. So again, it was a good game and I got another win. And the final game of the tournament was on a horrible Mechanicus terrain board, but my opponent was gracious enough to count most of them as ruins. He had Tyrannid Assimilation Swarm, and it was a really good game. He had these big bugs who he just stomped up the middle of the board. I was able to charge them with my Breaker Boys and cut them up a bit, but unfortunately had a key charge go wrong and just wasn't able to pip him. This was the supply drop mission as well, so big 15 points and he went second, so he was able to secure the win that way. So my overall takeaways, yeah, I did have fun in the end after a pretty rough day one. Just getting used to the terrain and the variable lists is something that I will definitely take into consideration if I go back next year. I also have a fair bit of decent terrain, and it was all provided by volunteers. So I did volunteer to give some of my terrain for the tables, but it was a bit late. I think I'll do that earlier next year and make sure that there's at least a few more tables with good terrain. Having said that, I think now that I have that expectation, I would structure a list more based around shooting and toughness at range, because when you do have those light terrain boards, it really disadvantages melee armies and armies that aren't particularly tough against shooting. And unfortunately, orcs fail on both of those counts. Their shooting is not really good unless you sort of take the dread mob or certain tactical brigades, and also they're not really tough against shooting. So might have a think about that over the course of the year. But yeah, it was great to meet a lot of people, play a lot of games in a short space, and definitely the highlight was the amount of hobby effort that has gone into the armies. It was really spectacular. So I'll leave you with a showcase of a lot of the armies. Thanks for listening, and I'll hope to make some more videos again soon.